Picture this. November 1916. A lifeboat descends from the sinking hospital ship Britannic. Inside, 3 people who've already survived Olympics collision in 1911 and the Titanic. As they hit the water, the ship's massive propellers, still spinning, exposed as Britannic tips forward, pull them toward the churning blades. A stewardess, a stoker, a lookout. All 3 jump. All 3 survive. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some extreme turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call. Hello, and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I am your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm just Zach, steady getting scolded every night.
Okay. So, Zach, when we decided to start this podcast, probably the most common question that I got was, are you going to do the Titanic? You're going to cover the Titanic. You're doing like a disaster transportation podcast.
And you're like, everybody covers the Titanic.
I didn't want to do the Titanic. And
the Titanic, if you would.
Yeah, because it is a very played out story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's been covered by probably thousands at this point of different stuff.
So true. But because so many people requested it, I decided to at least look into it and started doing a little bit of research. And what I uncovered,
Jack,
has nothing to do with Jack, but is a very fascinating story that I had never heard before. So we are going to tell the story of the Titanic today, but we're doing it Final Boarding Call style.
I'm not sure what our style is.
Okay. Before we dive in, a quick reminder to our listeners, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have stickers, so go ahead and email us screenshots of your reviews and your 5-star ratings, and we will send you a sticker. Oh!
Even more than stickers, guys.
Yeah, Zach's got an announcement.
Shirts. We've got, I think, even a hat. I don't know, did we have a hat on there?
We have a full merch store.
We have a merch store, and I'm wearing one of these shirts right now, and I am a shirt snob. I like soft shirts, and these are lovely, comfortable, embroidered, fancy. They're good. We've
got a few different types of shirts, even, that you can get. Long sleeve, short sleeve. We've got hoodies. We've got regular crew neck sweatshirts.
We got sweatpants. Alice has been wearing them up a storm.
Oh my gosh, our jogger pants are amazing. And we have like cute little accessories too. Anyway, the prices are very reasonable. That was a huge thing for me.
Also, we're just some people here having fun, spreading the word, okay? We're not getting rich here.
We're not making money off the merch store. We just, if you like the pod, we want you to be able to share the love. And
I still can't adapt calling it a pod. It just feels weird.
What is this?
A podcast.
Oh my gosh. Okay, sources.
Calling it a pod just feels real hipster to me, and I can't do it.
Sources for this episode. Violet Jessop does have a memoir called Titanic Survivor. There's Old Salt Blogs research on Arthur John Priest, Maritime, Archaeology Trust records. There's a lot for this episode, so please go to
the list go on and on.
Well, this is the story of 3 people, so I had to do a lot of research. It's 3 people, and it's 3 ships.
That's wild, because I thought this was the story of a girl who cried a river and drowned the whole world.
Before we follow these 3 people through multiple disasters, let's understand who they were and how they came to work for the White Star Line, a company that would put them in harm's way
over and over and over again. Sounds like some Final Destination shit. It's like, you cheated death. It's still after you.
Oh, Zach, you're not going to believe this because I didn't when I was researching it. Violet Constance Jessop was born on October 2nd, 1887, in the Pampas of Argentina. I know. As the eldest daughter of 9. Only 6 of whom survived childhood, because it's the 1880s.
Yeah.
Violet spent much of her early life caring for her younger siblings. At a young age, she contracted tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis.
And she was given months to live. But guess what?
She said, nah.
Violet defied medical expectations and recovered completely. When she was 16, her father died from complications following a surgery. Her mother moved the family to England and began working as a stewardess. Which is different than what we think. So she started working as a stewardess, which is actually a female attendant who served women and children aboard passenger ships.
Oh, stewardess.
When her mother became too ill to continue, Violet left school to support the family. It was while caring for her sick baby sister that Violet realized her ultimate calling: nursing.
Okay, I could see that.
She wanted to help the sick and dying. But first, she needed some money.
Don't we all?
At 21, she applied to become a stewardess, but she was told that she was too young and too attractive.
Show me a pic.
Okay. Steamship companies preferred middle-aged women, believing that younger women would actually be distractions.
Honestly, fair. You can't say it in 2026, but fair.
Bad. In her memoir, Violet describes how she deliberately made herself look older and less attractive in order to get hired, which is the most boss move and something I 100% would do. If I wanted a job, I'm like, hell yeah.
Fine, let me just grunge down for this.
Yes,
God.
Absolutely. But the maritime industry's treatment of women went deeper. She recounts how a captain made unwanted advances toward her, which she rejected. Later, working under the same captain on a different ship, he suddenly claimed that she was incompetent and had her dismissed. Her rejection of him had cost her a job. And I hope that guy got diarrhea. With few options left, Violet settled for employment with a company that she wasn't particularly keen to work for, the White Star Line. According to Violet, we in other lines heard much about White Star, which is a cryptic reference suggesting that the company had a reputation among maritime workers, though she never elaborated on that. But we can put 2 and 2 together. Now, let me introduce our 2 other characters in this fun story. Arthur John Priest was born in 1887, the same year as Violet, in Southampton, England. England. Unlike Violet's work serving passengers, Priest worked in the bowels of the ships as a stoker. So he is shoveling coal into the massive boilers that powered these ocean liners. And anybody who has watched the fictional movie, the Titanic, has seen
rough, rugged, ripped dudes doing it.
Like, yes. Those men, get it. Think about this job for a moment with me here. You are working in extreme heat with coal dust filling the air and the constant risk of boiler explosions, which were not uncommon.
They weren't going to live long lives.
Oh, it was brutal and dangerous
Cancer.
work.
Proposition 65, California.
And this work was performed by the invisible workforce that made luxury travel, because that's what these ocean liners were at the time, possible. While first-class passengers danced in the ballrooms and drank their fancy drinks and smoked in the cigar rooms, stokers like Priest were working in conditions very similar to hell.
She knows because she's been there.
Many times. Archie Jewell is our third fun cast characters here. And he worked as a lookout, which is the crew member positioned high in the crow's nest.
He's the one that didn't call out the iceberg.
Iceberg head. Right? They are scanning the horizon for dangers like icebergs, other ships, navigational hazards. And his job requires sharp eyes, quick reflexes, and the ability to remain alert for long periods of time.
You're going to be sitting here for the next 29 hours, so focus up.
And he could not be, scrolling the Instagram. He had to be really focused.
Elle couldn't tap twice on that ass like Graham.
Oh boy, little Dickie reference there. The lookout's warning could mean the difference between safety and disaster, as we learned with the Titanic. But we'll get there when we get there. These three people, a stewardess serving first-class passengers, a stoker working in the hell room, the engine room, and a lookout high above the deck, came from different worlds within the maritime hierarchy. Under normal circumstances, their paths would probably never really cross in a meaningful way. But in 1911, all three found themselves working for the White Star Line, about to be assigned to the company's newest flagship, the RMS Olympic. Yep. The RMS Olympic was the first of three sister ships in the Olympic class, followed by the Titanic, and later, the Britannic.
Yeah, no, but
like Britannica, but without the just Britannic.
Oh, like Mater without the tuh.
Before we get into the first disaster, you need to understand the ships. As that is important.
Ships.
These were not just boats. They were
ships.
They were ships, and they were big. They were massive ships, especially given the time that they were built. The Olympic-class ships, which is what all three of these were the largest moving objects ever created by humans up to this point. Olympic launched in 1910. It was 882 feet long, nearly 3 football fields end to end. And she displaced 45,324 gross tons and could carry 2,435 passengers plus a crew of 950.
That's a lot of space. And she's a big girl.
She's huge. The Titanic, even bigger. So the Titanic launched in 1911 and was 46,328 gross tons. The Britannic launched in 1914, and she was the biggest, 48,158 gross tons. So
it's weird to think about loading that into the water.
I know. And nowadays, for any of our listeners who have been on like cruise ships, they're gigantic.
Yeah, they're bigger.
They're, oh my gosh.
But they're also
megalodon.
I mean, they're way taller, they're longer, they're everything bigger.
But we've got to think. This is like 1911 to 1914. We are over 100 years later launching our massive cruise ships. These are an incredible feat for the time period. So what makes them Olympic class was their shared design, and this is very interesting and important. So 3 propellers powered by 2 reciprocating engines, plus a turbine, 9 decks, 15 watertight bulkheads, and 4 massive funnels. Through the 4th was actually a dummy used only for ventilation and aesthetics.
It looks more even that way.
I know.
Nobody likes an odd number.
It reminds me of, was it the Honda Civic that did a weird, like, sporty looking exhaust, but only one of them was actually functional? There was recently a car that did something like that. Where it's like, oh, it looks so cool. except one of them doesn't do anything. While their rival, Cunard is the name of the rival, their ships could cross the Atlantic in under 5 days at 27 knots. White Star's Olympic-class ships took 6 days at 23 knots. We are prioritizing comfort over speed, baby.
We comfy. We are pretty.
We are steady.
Fancy.
We are quiet. We are luxurious. They are floating palaces, and they are designed to dominate through size and... These are not speedboats. The Britannic incorporated safety improvements directly from the Titanic, which we will talk about more later. But it is interesting to know that there are kind of improvements made on each ship as its
We're learning as we go.
Sinks.
Like, as all these people died, we're going to go ahead and fix this one thing.
It's so messed up. For first-class passengers, Olympic offered unprecedented luxury. And for crew like Violet, Priest, and Jewell, it meant long hours for modest pay. Olympic's maiden voyage began on June 14th, 1911, commanded by Captain Edward Smith. The guinea pigs say hi. The captain. This is important. Captain Edward Smith, who, for all of my trivia nerds out there, that name probably sounds familiar. Yes, the captain who would later go down with the Titanic. For the first few months, Olympic operated without incident. But on September 20th, 1911, all three of our protagonists would experience their first brush with maritime disaster. Olympic was departing Southampton on her 5th commercial voyage. Captain Smith was in command, and Violet Jessop was among the stewardesses. Arthur Priest was doing his thing as a stoker, and Archie Jewell was serving as the lookout. As Olympic navigated the Solent, which is the strait separating the Isle of Wight and mainland England, she was running parallel to HMS Hawke, which is a 7,700-ton British warship.
Oh.
Yeah. Designed with reinforced bow for ramming enemy vessels.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Olympic made a turn to starboard, the powerful suction generated by her massive hull pulled the smaller Hawke toward her. As the massive Olympic, 45,000 tons, displacing an enormous volume of water, moved through the relatively shallow waters of the Solent, that water had to rush around the hull to fill the space behind the ship. This created a zone of low pressure between Olympic and the much smaller Hawke. The low pressure acted like a vacuum, and it literally sucked the Hawke toward Olympic.
Sucked the Hawke.
It did. Despite the Hawke captain ordering hard a port, which is to turn away, the physical force of the water overrode the ship's go get 'em attitude and rudder. And at approximately 12:45 p.m., the reinforced bow of this warship collided with Olympic's starboard side, tearing not one, but 2 large holes in Olympic's hull. The damage was severe. It left a triangular hole about 12 feet wide above the waterline, so that's something. But it also did a massive 40-foot gash below the waterline.
Ugh, silly gash.
The starboard propeller shaft was bent, and we do not like a bent shaft. And 2 watertight compartments flooded immediately. HMS Hawke's bow was completely crushed and telescoped inward, which is kind of crazy to think about. Just the ship nearly capsized. The impact flooded 2 watertight compartments and twisted one of her propeller shafts.
Heck yeah.
Yep. HMS Hawke suffered even worse damage. Her bow was crushed and the ship was nearly capsizing. But Olympic stayed afloat because she was designed to survive with up to 4 compartments flooded. With only 2, remarkably, no one was killed or seriously injured.
Okay.
What? Despite the damage, Captain Smith maintained control and Olympic returned to Southampton under her own power.
Okay.
I know.
I'm impressed.
It's cool. This success actually reinforced White Star's dangerous overconfidence in their unsinkable designs, which will really...
See, guys, we proved it. It didn't sink.
It's really going to bite him in the ass on the Titanic. For Violet, Arthur Priest, and Archie Jewell, this collision seemed manageable. I mean, concerning, but it was not traumatic. The ship stayed afloat, everybody survived, and within weeks, Olympic was back in service.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Replace some panels, weld it up, paint it, call it a day.
Be weld on there, call it good. Violet would later write, "Time flies when you're busy. Certainly, the first year of Olympic's life was gone before I was aware it was over, spent in the hectic rush which is typical of a new ship. What none of them knew was that this calm response to disaster would become a pattern and that they would experience it alongside each other again. And next time.
And again.
And next time was going to be much, much worse." Following Olympic's repairs, which required borrowing parts from the unfinished Titanic, which delayed the Titanic's maiden voyage by several weeks. There's a fun fact. Violet, Priest, and Jewell continued their work for White Star Line. In April of 1912, all 3 were among the crew selected for Titanic's maiden voyage. They probably felt like they won the lottery, and they did. Violet especially not won the lottery. They felt like they won the lottery. Violet felt so privileged to serve aboard a luxury liner of this caliber. She was pumped. She was particularly taken with Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, whom she described as generous and kind, with a tired face but satisfied air.
They used different words back then, guys.
They did. I also have a tired face, so I get that. Yeah. On April 10th of 1912, Titanic departed Southampton with approximately 2,224 people aboard, about 900 crew and just over 1,300 passengers. The passenger manifest included some of the wealthiest people in the world. Violet served first-class passengers. Arthur Priest shoveled coal in the engine rooms, and Archie Jewell kept watch from the crow's nest. The first several days at sea were entirely uneventful. Violet later noted an interesting detail. She had brought a prayer offering protection from both fire and water, given to her by an Irish woman. On the night before the disaster, Violet, who was a devout Catholic, read this prayer and even made her roommate read it. I don't know if it did them much good, but they read it. On the night of April 14th, 1912, Violet writes that she was comfortably drowsy in her bunk when the collision occurred at 11:40 p.m. Despite receiving multiple ice warnings, Titanic was traveling a near top speed through an area known to have ice. The night was unusually clear and calm, creating a glassy sea with no waves to break at the base of icebergs, which made them almost impossible to spot. When Lookout Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg directly ahead, he rang the warning bell and he telephoned the bridge. Iceberg right ahead. The ship began to turn, but as most of us know, it was too late. Just 37 seconds later, Titanic's starboard side scraped along the iceberg below the waterline. The impact created a series of holes spanning approximately 300 feet, flooding the ship's... Wow. Flooding It's a very dramatic part to have a weird sound go off. Flooding the ship's first 5 watertight compartments. Titanic was designed to stay afloat with up to 4 compartments flooded. With 5 taking on water, the disaster became mathematically inevitable. The ship would sink. Initially, there was little sense of danger. Violet recalls passengers strolling about calmly, many viewing the iceberg with curiosity. But behind the scenes, Captain Smith was receiving alarming reports. After consulting with Thomas Andrews, who was the ship's designer, he learned the devastating truth. Titanic would sink within hours. Gosh, that'd be crazy to...
I remember that part of the movie.
Yeah. At around 12:05 a.m., Smith gave the order to uncover the lifeboats and muster passengers. I was ordered up on deck, Violet later wrote. Calmly, passengers strolled about. I stood with the other stewardesses, watching the women cling to their husbands before being put into the boats. One critical fact: the ship did not carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board, and the Titanic had 20 lifeboats with a capacity for 1,178 people, far short
half
of the 2,224 people aboard. This wasn't unusual for the time. Regulations were based on ship tonnage, not passenger capacity. So the math is, Violet's main duty was demonstrating how to put on life belts for non-English speaking passengers.
Okay.
As the reality of the situation became clearer, panic did begin to set in. Many refused to enter lifeboats, unable to believe that the unsinkable Titanic could go down, but it would. At around 1:35 a.m., Violet was finally ordered into lifeboat 16 to show women it was safe. Just as her boat was being lowered, an officer suddenly called, "Here, Miss Jessop, look after this baby."
Uh-oh.
And a bundle was dropped into her lap.
Okay.
Yeah, folks. And it was a human child. That was a baby. Arthur Priest, working in the engine room as water flooded in, scrambled for survival. The fact that he survived, to me, is just absolutely...
Yeah, he was at kind of 0.0 of where water started coming in, right?
Yeah, he's in the engine room. Archie Jewell, the lookout, evacuated from above. All 3 survived, but they were among only 705 survivors. More than 1,500 people went down with the ship or died in the freezing 28-degree water within 15 to 30 minutes. Violet spent 8 hours in the lifeboat before rescue arrived, in the form of the RMS Carpathia. Aboard the rescue ship, a woman suddenly snatched the baby from Violet's arms without a word and disappeared.
Interesting.
Records suggest the baby was likely Assad Thomas, who died in 1931, a detail that will become important later. So later, at the British inquiry, Archie was the first survivor called to testify. When questioned about whether lookouts were given by binoculars, he replied, "No, we never had any glasses. We had them in the Oceanic. I was on the lookout once there. We all spoke about it together. They wanted to know what had become of the glasses." Yikes. When pressed on whether binoculars were necessary, he gave a very modest seaman's answer. "If you have good eyesight, it is not necessary to have them, perhaps."
Perhaps.
Perhaps, except that the Titanic sank.
Nobody had good eyesight, okay? He's still right.
Yes, not. At the conclusion of his testimony, Lord Mersey, the inquiry chairman, offered rare personal praise. "Thank you, Jewell. And if you will allow me to say so, I think you have given your evidence very well indeed."
Lord mercy.
Lord of mercy. Okay, so he actually wrote a letter to his sister that I found very, very interesting. So I'm going to read a little bit from it. So he wrote this while he was on board another ship, because Archie is a freak that way. And so he said, this was on April 24th, 1912. I shall never forget the sight of that lovely big ship going down and the awful cry of the people in the water. And you could hear them dying out one by one. It was enough to make anyone jump overboard and out of the way. I can't help crying when I think about it.
Wow.
I know. And he was very blunt about the lack of lifeboats, because he also wrote, I think it is a shame to let them big boats go to sea with such a small lot of boats. Had there been boats enough, nearly everyone would have been saved. Damn.
Hindsight is a real bitch.
The sinking of Titanic led directly to new maritime safety regulations. Enough lifeboats for all. Mandatory lifeboat drills. 24-hour radio watch. And the International Ice Patrol to monitor icebergs. For many survivors, the psychological impact lasted a lifetime. But here is what's really remarkable. Just 2 weeks after the Titanic inquiries concluded, Violet was back at it. She's back on a boat. She's back aboard Olympic, the happy ship, as she called it. Oh, boy.
She felt good about it. It sailed 7 times and only had one big issue.
And her logic behind this, she writes in her diary later, is basically the concept of just getting back on the horse. She's like, if I take too long off, I'm going to lose my nerve and I'm never going to be able to get on a ship again. I need to make money. Like, I got to rip the Band-Aid off. So she does. In 1912, PTSD was not understood, but Violet intuitively knew that avoidance would destroy her. So, boom, she's taking care of business. Arthur Priest and Archie Jewell also returned to maritime work. All 3 had now survived 2 major incidents together. The statistical odds of being on both Olympic during the Hawk collision and Titanic during the sinking were already astronomical.
So why would a third one happen?
But 4 years later, fate would put all 3 of them together one last time. When World War I broke out in 1914, Violet saw an opportunity to pursue her childhood calling.
Time to nurse it up.
Time to nurse it up. She volunteered with the British Red Cross to serve aboard hospital ships. It's 2 things she knows how to do. Be on ship. Let's take care of sick people. So she could now fulfill that dream of being a nurse while helping wounded soldiers. And with her maritime experience and her familiarity with Olympic-class vessels, she was assigned to the newly designated hospital ship, the HMHS Britannic.
All right, then.
Here we go. Britannic was the 3rd Olympic-class liner at 48,158 gross tons.
Jesus Christ.
She was the largest of all the sisters. She a big girl.
She ate the most mashed potatoes.
She's huge. And what makes her particularly interesting is that she incorporated extensive safety improvements directly resulting from the sinking of her sister, the Titanic. 6 of the 15 watertight bulkheads were raised to B deck, addressing Titanic's fatal flaw where water had spilled over bulkhead tops. The ship could stay afloat with 6 compartments flooded instead of 4, and she carried 48 lifeboats.
You know, it's funny that they made it 2 more than the Titanic, just because they're like, well, 5 brought down the Titanic, so if we had 6, it would have been fine.
It'll be fine. But that's very true, Zach. But what's very important is that she had 48 lifeboats, which was actually above her maximum capacity. Like that could
Right.
hold more people than the ship could hold. Britannic never carried a single paying passenger. So she was kind of utilized as a hospital ship, repainted white with large red crosses.
Okay.
Yeah. Inside, 3,309 beds and operating rooms replaced luxury accommodations. The grand staircase was repurposed for war service.
Good. Fuck them rich people.
Among the medical team of 101 nurses was Violet. Also aboard, Arthur John Priest, working again as a stoker, and Archie Jewell, again serving as lookout. By November 1916, Britannic had completed 5 successful voyages between Southampton and the Mediterranean, transporting thousands of wounded soldiers. On November 12th, she departed for her 6th voyage. By the morning of November 21st, Britannic was steaming at full speed through the Kia Channel near Greece. There were 1,066 people aboard, 673 crew, 315 Royal Army Medical Corps personnel, 77 nurses, including Violet and the captain. None of them knew that a German submarine, SMU-73, had planted mines in the Kia Channel exactly 1 month earlier. I know. At 8:12 a.m., Britannic struck one of these mines. The explosion was massive, occurring on the starboard side between holds 2 and 3, flooding 4 compartments immediately. But Britannic was designed to survive with 6 compartments flooded. In theory, she should have been fine. But things went catastrophically wrong. Captain Charles Alfred Bartlett immediately ordered watertight doors closed, sent a distress signal, and ordered crew to prepare lifeboats. But despite all of the safety improvements, Britannic faced a critical problem. First, it was a warm Mediterranean morning. Nurses preparing the wards for wounded soldiers had opened hundreds of windows on the lower decks to ventilate the space. We're not talking a window, hundreds of windows. And seawater came pouring in through these, completely bypassing the watertight bulkheads. Within 15 minutes, the open portholes on E-deck were underwater. And within 25 minutes, Britannic was in roughly the same condition the Titanic had been in after an hour. So, 15 minutes after the explosion, the open portholes on E-deck were underwater. 15 minutes. In about 10 minutes, Britannic was in roughly the same condition the Titanic had been in after a full hour.
Wow.
In a desperate bid to save his ship, Captain Bartlett attempted to beach Britannic on nearby Kia Island. He ordered the engines to continue running. This decision would have catastrophic consequences. As the list increased, some crew members decided to lower lifeboats without waiting for orders. They're like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Third Officer Francis Laws lowered 2 lifeboats on the port side. Because Bartlett had kept the engines running, the propellers were still turning, partially exposed due to the list. The 2 unauthorized lifeboats were sucked directly towards these massive churning blades.
And they are big.
They're big. They're real big. Before Bartlett could stop the engines, both lifeboats had pulled into the propellers and were completely destroyed. these were not empty boats. 30 people were killed.
Ah.
Yeah. Obliterated.
I was thinking that they were not loaded up yet because it just says he dropped a couple.
They
so
were
I was
loaded.
thinking the boats, not the peoples.
They were loaded, and they were obliterated by the spinning blades. It would be the only casualties of the sinking, but they died in
Gruesome fashion.
horrible way. Violet Jessop, Arthur Priest, and Archie Jewell were all assigned to lifeboat 16.
Their fates were intertwined, I tell you.
Telling you, the same 3 people who had survived Olympic and Titanic are now literally in the same boat. They're in the same boat. Again, as their lifeboat was lowered, they watched in horror as other boats were sucked into the propellers. Violet describes the moment. So this is a quote from Violet herself. Almost absent-mindedly, I noticed that all the other passengers on board jumped over the side. Looking around in confusion, my eyes landed on Britannic's massive propellers, still spinning wildly, rising out of the water as the ship began to go down by the head. Lifeboats were being sucked in toward the twisted screws, and I looked on in horror as anything and anyone in the path of the blades were obliterated. Violet had never been submerged in water before. She had no idea how to swim.
Oh.
But
made a life out of being on a boat.
And in this situation, she jumped. She chose uncertain death by drowning over certain death by the propeller, which is sucking boats into it. She did make one critical mistake. Remembering not having a toothbrush after Titanic, she grabbed one for Britannic. But she'd also put her life vest over her heavy coat, something that she'd warned Titanic passengers against doing.
Because it's extra weight and it'll drag you down, or
the
snag
coat
on things?
Negated the vest's buoyancy. Disoriented and struggling in the water, Violet slammed her head twice against something rock solid, the bottom of her own lifeboat. Years later, a routine medical exam would reveal that she had actually fractured her skull in this escape, an injury that she hadn't even known about. Arthur Priest and Archie Jewell also jumped from lifeboat 16, escaping the propellers that killed 30 others in neighboring boats.
Wow.
Archie Jewell didn't escape Britannic unscathed. So after the mine exploded, someone rushed out of a cabin and they accidentally struck him in the head. So, he got an injury from this, but it was not really pertaining to the ship. Despite his head injury, he ended up assisting on deck with the evacuations. Later, he wrote to family with dark humor, I ran up the boat deck and then someone tied my eye up so I was like old Nelson, which is a reference to Admiral Lord Nelson, the British naval hero who was famous for wearing an eye patch. But his humor masked absolute terror. After jumping from lifeboat 16 to escape the propellers, he described being pulled toward the spinning blades. I shut my eyes and I said goodbye to this world, but I was struck with a big piece of the boat and I got pushed right under the blades. And I was going around like a top. I came up just in time. So he ended up surviving because a piece of debris knocked him
and pushed him
away
under
from the propellers. By 9:07 a.m., just 55 minutes after the mine strike, Britannic disappeared beneath the waves with a final roar. She had become the largest ship lost in World War I, sinking nearly 3 times faster than Titanic, despite being even safer. But compared to Titanic, the rescue was quick. The warm Mediterranean water was in their favor. So it was 68 degrees versus the 28 degrees of the water during the Titanic. They had more lifeboats, and help was much closer. And that meant that 1,036 out of the 1,066 people on board survived. So 30 people died, which is still incredibly horrific, but I mean, compared to the Titanic numbers. Local fishermen from Kia arrived first, picking up survivors, including Violet. HMS Scourge and HMS Heroic picked up the rest. About 150 survivors made it to shore, where doctors and nurses, including Violet, worked with limited supplies to save the injured. The Athens press immediately latched onto Violet's story because it's insane. Articles from late November 1916 described the stewardess who survived both sisters. The first time that she was publicly dubbed a legend, her story had international reach before she even processed what had happened. For Violet, Priest, and Jewell, surviving Britannic meant that they had now lived through 3 disasters together. The statistical odds.
And never to go in the water again.
I mean, it's completely insane. I really don't know what the statistical odds of that are, but it's got to be just wild. It's wild. However, Zach, their story, this shared story, is not over yet.
Oh, Jesus.
I've got one more story for you. Let's do it. By April 1917, just 6 months after Britannic, the British Merchant Navy was a gauntlet of German U-boats. The English Channel had become a killing zone.
Love that.
Yeah, I don't. Arthur John Priest and Archie Jewell found themselves assigned to the SS Donegal, which is a ferry converted into an ambulance ship for transporting wounded soldiers. So these two are back at it on the same boat. While there's no surviving diary entry of their conversation, it's a historical certainty that they knew each other by this point. Both had survived Olympic's collision, Titanic's sinking, and the Britannic's propeller disaster. They'd been in the same lifeboat during the most horrific moment. To see a familiar face from the unsinkable sisters in the cramped, coal-dusted quarters of the Donegal must have been both comforting and also a bit of a dark omen. I do wonder if I'd be like, you again? You? Don't know if I love the you thing. On the night of April 17th, 1917, the Donegal was steaming through the English Channel, headed for Southampton. It was clear, but the Channel was still a war zone. The German submarine UC-21, commanded by Reinhold Salzwedel, was lying in wait. Without warning, a torpedo slammed into the Donegal's side near the engine room. The explosion was massive. The ship, much smaller than the Olympic-class liners, began to sink almost immediately. Unlike the slow, majestic sinks of Titanic and Britannic, this was violent and it was rapid. There was no time for women and children first protocols. This was a desperate scramble in the dark. Arthur Priest was in the firehouse, the engine room, when the explosion occurred. His priority was a vertical sprint for survival, a move that he had now practiced 3 times before.
And he was clearly good at it.
He was good at it. He scrambled through flooding corridors, climbed toward the deck, and he made it to the water. He survived, suffering a severe head laceration and internal bleeding. Archie Jewell was on deck when the torpedo hit. In the ensuing panic and the rapid listing of the ship. Listing means tilting. I think that's
I gathered that.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. He was seen attempting to assist with the lifeboats, but the Donegal sank so quickly that many were pulled under by suction or thrown into the freezing April waters. There's no record of Priest seeing Jewell during the sinking. Priest was fighting his way up from below, so he was in hell, and Jewell was on deck helping others. In those final chaotic moments, they never found each other. Archie Jewell disappeared into the channel that night. 3 of history's greatest maritime disasters, Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic, the small sinking of a cross-channel ferry finally took him. He was only 30 years old.
30 and had been through all that?
I know. It's wild, right? So let me tell you about the physical toll that these disasters took on Arthur Priest, because every single one of them hurt him in some way. After Titanic, he suffered severe frostbite on his toes from the freezing Atlantic water. He later mentioned requiring drastic medical attention for his feet, which I would assume meant that he lost some toes. He also sustained a leg injury during the struggle to get into a lifeboat. In 1916, he survived the sinking of HMS Alcantara during a battle with the German raider Grief, which is a cool name for a ship. The ship was hammered by shell fire. Priest emerged from the boiler rooms with shrapnel wounds from the explosions.
All right, then.
And now, on the Donegal, the head wound was severe enough that he was deemed unfit for further service. This was a career-ending injury, though the real reason that he never sailed again was superstition.
Oh, suddenly everything's his fault.
He was deemed the black cat of boats, because every boat he got on, shit went wrong.
He should stop being that way.
Sailors began calling him a Jonah, a bringer of bad luck. The head injury became a convenient excuse for shipping lines to not hire him, but the real reason was superstition. No captain wanted to be the one to test if Priest's luck could hold a 5th time.
I also wouldn't want to sail with him, to be fair.
It's wild. So, what did Arthur Priest do for the next 20 years? Because he was forced into retirement.
He lived.
That is fair. He went from the heat of the boiler rooms to the opposite extreme. Refrigeration. He worked as a laborer maintaining cold storage and cooling units on land in Southampton.
I guess me not being around back then, there's a lot of things where I'm just like, find a different job.
You say that about yourself.
But yeah, I should find a different job for sure. If anybody has any great markets to get into, let me know.
Oh my God. This is not a call for multi-level marketing schemes. We don't want to sell your essential oils. Okay, so he had grown up in poverty as one of 12 children, and his shore job provided a steady but humbling working-class income. He was awarded the Mercantile Marine Ribbon for his war service, but he never became wealthy from any of his work. In fact, he largely avoided the media. Occasionally, newspapers featured him as the unsinkable stoker, which is
It's a cool, actually really cool name.
Yep, but he almost never gave interviews. He really preferred to share his stories with friends at pubs rather than talk to reporters. Living in Southampton, a major maritime hub, Priest almost certainly knew that his old ship was being scrapped. Olympic's final departure in 1935 was a major local event. For a man who'd survived the violent deaths of her 2 sisters, seeing the old reliable turned into scrap metal must have felt like the closing of a chapter.
That's fair.
In February 1937, Priest went to work while suffering from the flu. The cold environment of the refrigeration units worsened his conditions into pneumonia, which in 1937 is bad. And it did kill him at 49 years old. So here...
It's a fairly long life back then.
Yeah, it's pretty wild after all of this went down. Arthur Priest's wife, Annie, remarried twice after his death and outlived him by 35 years, passing away in 1972 at the age of 74. Their 3 sons faced their own tragedies. Their eldest, Arthur John, died in 1920 at just 3 years old, shortly after Priest retired from the sea. Their son, George William, born in 1919, fought in World War II and actually survived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Frederick Harry, born in 1921, lived until 1997, dying at 75, which is pretty baller. Both sons remained private about their father's unsinkable status. There are likely living descendants today, but the family has largely stayed out of the public eye. So if anybody takes a, whatever it is, 23andMe or Ancestry.com, whatever, family tree shenanigans, and you figure out that you are related to Archie Jewell or anyone else that we cover in any of our stories,
reach out.
I will send you a sticker because that is so cool. Archie Jewell's wife, Bessie, faced even greater heartbreak. There's no record that she ever remarried. She dedicated her life to raising their son Raymond alone. In 1930, when Raymond was just 14 years old, he died from a serious illness. This poor woman lost her husband at sea in 1917 and her only child in 1930.
Yeah, that sucks.
Oh my God. She ensured that Archie wasn't forgotten. On Raymond's headstone in the parish churchyard of Burlescombe, Devon, she included a memorial inscription for Archie, linking the father lost at sea with the son lost to illness. Archie is also commemorated on panel 36 of the Tower Hill Memorial in London, which lists merchant seamen who have no grave but the sea. Neither Bessie nor Annie gave public interviews about their husbands' extraordinary survival records. In the early 20th century, the wives of maritime workers often dealt with trauma privately within their own communities. The most significant public voice for the Jewell family came decades later when Archie's private letter to his family were sold at auction.
Oh.
Yeah, the letters were sold.
Interesting.
In 2008. I know. Finally revealing the emotional toll that these disasters had taken, which is pretty wild. There is no evidence that Violet Jessop and Arthur Priest maintained close correspondence after 1917. They moved in different circles. Violet continued her career at sea into the 1950s, while Priest remained a shore-based laborer. Violet's memoir, Titanic Survivor, mentions the presence of fellow Titanic survivors on Britannic, but it doesn't contain detailed accounts of her feelings about Archie's death or her relationship with Priest after the war. Priest was notoriously private, especially being blacklisted for superstitious reasons.
He might have been a little bit bitter, as he should have been.
He may have been. Yeah. His primary documented reaction after the Donegal was simply his remark that, this is a quote, "No one wished to sail with him anymore." I feel so bad for this guy. So, Archie Jewell survived Olympics collision in 1911. He survived Titanic in 1912, survived the Britannic propeller disaster, and then at 30, he died, obviously, when the torpedo struck the SS Donegal. His body was never recovered, but he is commemorated on the Tower Hill Memorial in London, alongside thousands of other merchant mariners lost at sea. Okay, so let's talk about Violet. She chose a different path. So after surviving the Britannic, she took time to recover. Then she returned to the sea. She worked as a stewardess on Red Star and Royal Mail ships until her retirement in 1950 at 63.
Okay, good for her.
I know, she had a particular fondness for the SS Belgenland, though nothing matched her beloved Olympic. Girl loved the Olympic.
Well, she loved the man that designed him, at least.
Bless her. In retirement, she kept busy raising chickens, tending her garden, and learning to drive. I mean, amazing. The disasters mostly stayed in her past, though Titanic had one final surprise for her. One night, about a year before her death, her phone rang. A woman asked, "Have you seen the heart of the ocean?" No, I'm just kidding. Oh, it was her. It was her story the whole time. No. A woman asked, "Is this Violet Jessop, who was the stewardess on Titanic and rescued a baby?"
Tell me about the child.
And when Violet said yes, the voice replied, "I was that baby."
Wow.
Okay, remember Assad Thomas, the likely baby from Lifeboat 16, who died in 1931. The phone call came in the late 1960s or early 1970s, so it couldn't have been him. Was it a prank? Was it another survivor? Violet insisted that she'd never told anyone about the baby. Violet Jessop died in 1971 at the age of 83. Of the 3 survivors, she lived the longest and
Probably lived the best.
she did her thing. She did her thing. Okay, but what about her beloved RMS Olympic? The old reliable served faithfully for 24 years, completing nearly 500 Atlantic crossings.
Okay.
I know. During World War I, she served as a troop ship and even rammed and sank the German submarine U-103.
Good.
Bad bitch.
Fuck them.
Unlike her sisters, Olympic never sank from accident, attack, or disaster. She was retired in 1935 and scrapped in 1937, the same year that Arthur Priest died, having outlived 2 sisters and most of her crew. Olympic was the only one of the 4 to die of old age. Woof. 3 people survived this story.
Well, most of the story.
So, yes, that is true. So here's the question, Zach. What's worse? Dying in your 4th disaster or at 30, or surviving it and spending the next 20 years as a pariah?
I would say surviving the 3rd and keep doing the same thing. That would be the worst part. It couldn't be me. I would just be like, dang, I'm not cut out for this.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, Violet Jessop wasn't called Miss Unsinkable during her lifetime as some kind of celebration. It was a recognition of something uncanny, something that made people uncomfortable. She was the woman who should have died 3 times, and she didn't. In the end, only one of them grew old. Only one of them got to choose when to leave the sea. Only one of them refused to let the disasters win. She wasn't unsinkable. She was unbreakable. And that is not the same thing at all. That's my take on the Titanic.
Well, I prefer it that way because it's not just the Titanic. Why didn't they cover all this other stuff in movies if the Titanic was such a big deal to them?
It's wild, I know.
Less rich people to ask for it, I guess.
Who knows? But it turns out there were 3 ships. Shit happened to all 3 of them, and there were people that were on all 3 of the ships every single time.
They cover in the movie that there are sister ships.
Yes.
But
yeah,
never heard anything about them. I just assumed that everything was hunky-dory. Guess not.
It was not, in fact, hunky-dory at all. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and leave us a comment, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. And And check out the merch store.
Yeah, take a gander at it.
Gander. And we'll be back next week with a normal aviation story. This is just a little bit of a wild card, something different to spice it up. But join us next time when we'll be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination.
Goodbye.
I had a coughing fit while a lady was waxing my eyebrows, and I've never been so scared in my life. She's like coming at me with the wax. I'm like, bad.